What happens to a democracy when citizens stop trusting ballots and begin resorting to hunger strikes? Can moral authority repair institutions, or does it end up overshadowing them? In the late 20th century, as India celebrated economic liberalization and rising global status, a quieter crisis was unfolding beneath the surface: the normalization of bribery. Files moved only when palms were greased. Ministers spoke of reform while scams multiplied. And into this disillusioned landscape stepped an unlikely figure, Anna Hazare, a rural ascetic who turned personal sacrifice into a national vocabulary. Anna Hazare was born Kisan Baburao Hazare in 1937 in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra. The region was notorious for drought. Water arrived like a reluctant guest and left even faster. His father was a low-ranking Ayurvedic worker. Education ended early. As a boy, Hazare sold flowers near Mumbai's Dadar station to keep his family afloat. Biographers note how these years forged his lifelong disdain for a state that demanded obedience but rarely delivered justice. The name Anna, meaning elder brother, was not a title he assumed. It was one his village later granted him. In that sense, Hazare's identity was always communal before it was political. Hazare joined the Indian Army in 1963 as a driver. Here lies the first turning point rarely explored deeply. During the 1965 Indo-Pakistan War, his unit was attacked. Almost everyone around him died. Hazare survived. That survival haunted him. Colleagues recalled that he considered leaving the army to end his life, convinced that he had no meaning left behind. It was in that fragile psychological state that Hazare began reading Gandhi and Vivekananda obsessively in military libraries. He later wrote, "When I saw death from close quarters, I understood the value of life. I felt I must dedicate this life for the betterment of society." Unlike many activists who discover ideology first and discipline later, Hazare encountered them in reverse. The army had taught him order, punctuality, and austerity. Gandhi gave that austerity a moral destination. After 12 years of service, Hazare took early retirement in 1975. And then he returned not to Delhi or Mumbai, but to the small struggling village of Raleghan Siddhi. Most channels narrate this segment as a simple rural development, but we tell you that it demands way more. In the late 1970s, Ralegan Siddhi was plagued by poverty, migration, alcoholism, and water mismanagement. Hazare began a grassroots experiment that Pradeep Thakur described as a laboratory of participatory governance. He insisted on Shramdan, voluntary labor. He mobilized youth groups. He built check dams and percolation tanks that captured monsoon rain. Trees were planted across hillsides, and within years, the water table rose dramatically. Grain banks ensured no family went hungry. Milk cooperatives created new income streams. School buildings were repaired. Village meetings, Gram Sabhas, became transparent courts of accountability. Hazare summarized his philosophy bluntly. Water is the soul of development. If you control water, you control your destiny. But destiny in Ralegan came with discipline. Hazare banned alcohol, cigarettes, and even cable television at one point. Habitual drinkers were sometimes tied to poles and shamed. This aspect is celebrated in Hindu biographies as firm social reform and condemned by liberal scholars as moral coercion. Ashutosh, in his book Anna, 13 Days That Awakened India, admits this contradiction. Ralegan was rebuilt through Anna's uncompromising will. The village became prosperous but also deeply regulated. From a progressive governance perspective, Hazare proved something significant: that rural India could be transformed without waiting for bureaucrats. But he also established a pattern that would follow him everywhere: that protest first, negotiation later, and purity above all. By the 1990s, Hazare moved beyond Ralegan to confront corruption in Maharashtra itself. This period is filled with milestones that remain under-acknowledged. He launched the Bhrashtachar Virodhi Jan Andolan in 1991, exposed corruption in irrigation contracts and forest land allocations, used hunger strikes to force the resignation of several state ministers, Around 400 officials were suspended or dismissed due to inquiries he initiated. Hazare's fasts were not impulsive tantrums, they were calibrated tools. He prepared detailed dossiers, collected affidavits, and turned public shame into administrative action. He often said in his speeches, "I am not against any person, I am against injustice." Yet, even supporters conceded that he was very much against particular politicians. In terms of scholarly ethos, Hazare's role in the right to information movement is significant to understand. For nearly a decade, Hazare campaigned across Maharashtra demanding that citizens be legally empowered to inspect government files. His argument was procedural, not merely spiritual. Corruption survives because information is denied to people, he said. He went on repeated fasts in 1997, 2003, and 2004, insisting that transparency must be institutionalized. The ISAS academic brief argues that Hazare pioneered a democratic tool that strengthened the accountability of citizens vis-a-vis the state. Finally, in 2005, the National RTI Act was passed. For progressive politics, this remains his greatest legacy. A law that trusted citizens' paperwork more than a saint's fasting body. And then came the moment that turned Anna Hazare into a domestic legend. April 2011. India was reeling from gigantic scandals under the UPA government. 2G spectrum scams, Commonwealth Games corruption, Adarsh Housing Society fraud. Urban India, newly confident but politically restless, felt cheated by its own success. Hazare began a hunger strike at Jantar Mantar, demanding a powerful anti-corruption ombudsman through the Jan Lokpal bill. Within days, millions rallied behind him. But let's pause and analyze this eruption. The ISAS brief describes the movement as a fusion of multiple anxieties: contempt for corrupt politicians, impatience with parliamentary complexity, envy for authoritarian efficiency, and faith in quick-fix solutions. Hazare's methods were Gandhian in appearance: fasting, non-violence, national flags, portraits of Gandhi. But the mobilization was thoroughly modern, driven by 24-hour news cycles and social media hashtags. Ashutosh captured the drama of these 13 days at Ramleela ground. It was not Parliament that dictated Anna's terms. It was Anna who dictated Parliament's conscience. For liberal scholars, this was thrilling and terrifying. Pratap Bhanu Mehta warned that the movement reflected a moral impatience that delegitimizes politics as a vocation. He called it the rise of a politics of righteousness. Dalit writers went further, labeling it a Manuwadi movement, claiming it was dominated by urban upper caste interests rather than subaltern justice. Arundhati Roy criticized the campaign as the anti-corruption with an authoritarian temperament. The protest succeeded. Parliament passed a sense of the House resolution agreeing to debate Lokpal seriously, but the final bill that emerged was inevitably a product of bargaining, precisely what Hazare had distrusted. Perhaps the most ironic tangent of Hazare's 2011 campaign was his repeated insistence: this movement has nothing to do with politics. And yet, everything that followed had everything to do with politics. His closest associates, Arvind Kejriwal and others, formed the Aam Aadmi Party, translating Anna's moral energy into electoral contestation. Hazare refused to join them. Thakur's biography records his skepticism: political parties come and go. Movements must remain permanent watchdogs. But the audience also must note, even movements need political vehicles to survive. After 2011, Hazare attempted new fasts on farmers' issues, electoral reforms, and anti-liquor drives. None mobilized India again. Without corruption as a universal urban villain, the English-speaking middle class slowly drifted away. Media cameras cooled. The man returned once more to Raleghan Siddhi, continuing local work, writing occasionally, protesting occasionally, and aging quietly. Anna Hazare's life offers a layered lesson for us all. He demonstrated that rural communities can be rebuilt through participatory engineering, protests can pressure complacent governments, transparency laws can be won through civic persistence. But he also revealed limits. Morality cannot replace procedure. Impatience with parliament can breed authoritarian fantasies. and charisma-centered activism risks narrowing plural voices. This concludes with a caution. The Anna Hazare movement successfully mobilized dormant citizens but glossed over problematic aspects of goals and methods. So we return to the questions we began with. What does Anna Hazare finally represent? A corruption crusader? Yes. A rural reformer? Certainly. But also a symbol of how easily democracies slide toward idols when institutions disappoint. His journey asks India and all of us, how do we convert outrage into institutions without turning institutions into altars? And perhaps that is Anna Hazare's most enduring gift. Not the fast that shook India, but the uncomfortable conscience they awakened.